오오 야 시작한다 스트리밍. 오 알려주셔서 감사합니다. 오오 뭐야 큰 거 오나? 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 오. 다 누군지 모르겠다.
I have the utmost pleasure of hosting this Overwatch 2 developer live stream where we want to talk about the upcoming Overwatch 2 beta, the alpha, and the general approach to content as well as communication. And joining me to answer some of the many questions I know that we all have after the most recent developer update are no other than Aaron Keller, our game director, Jeff Goodman, lead hero designer, and John Spector, commercial leader.
아, 그 옵지2 베타 합니다의 그 아저씨구나.
So excited to have you all on for this show. Now, last week,
여러 번 바뀌지 않았어요, 디렉터가? 그 짜잔 형 나간 뒤로 바뀌다가 이제 얘가 고정된 것 같은데. 예, 감사드립니다. 와주셔서. 봐서 어떤 좋은 시간을 가지면 좋겠어요. 우리가 뭐 의사소통 잘 됐으면 좋겠고요.
been able to talk about this, and it's been even longer since we've been in this position where we have
I don't know English
speaking a development build of Overwatch.
아 짜장 형 다음이 아론이에요? 그래요? 많이 안 바뀌었었구나. 나 왜 많이 바뀐 걸로 기억하지? 끼블리님 어서 오세요. 이거 통역해주는 사람 필요한데 설마 이거 통역해주는 사람이 있나요? 잠깐만. 근데 그 사람 걸 근데 봐도 될까? 안 되겠지? 통역해주는 사람 건 보면 안 되겠죠? 그 사람은 그 사람만의 그거니까.
Yeah, I'm the new guy on this team now, having just moved over
영어
from Overwatch
약한데.
a couple months ago. But I think just
모르는데.
what it's meant to a lot of the people on the team who have been working on this for years to now be able to show that to players, and we're
네?
you know a month and change away from being able to do that. The beta has just been amazing, and for me personally, it's just so exciting.
어메이징하게 바뀐다는데 그렇게 말만 번지르르게 하고 별거 아닌 걸 진짜 말만 번지르르게 한다 얘네 특이. 근데 그래서 너무 기대하면 안 돼요. 기대컨 잘 하셔야 돼요, 여러분. 나 솔직히 오버워치2에 기대 다 져버렸어. 져버린 지 오래야. 기대 안 해. 그냥 재미만 있으면 좋겠어.
When and why did you guys decide
그걸로
to
가야겠다.
more or less split the game in two?
So that's a really good question, and it is something we have talked about a lot, especially recently and over the last year. And I think to like really put it in perspective, it's important to talk about two values that are core to development for Overwatch, and the first is to always be delivering regular content to the game and updating it and keeping it feeling fresh and exciting.
미국 코로나
And the
이제
second value, and I think that this is a value, it's not just an Overwatch value.
확 풀지
it's a
않았나?
value that all
재택에서
of
해야 되나
Blizzard
굳이?
shares, and it's to release a game when we feel like it's ready, and when we feel like it's great. And so you take
다들
those two
재택에서
values,
하시네요.
and then in light of the team kind of choosing this strategy to focus on Overwatch 2, and to put a lot of resources into the campaign and the hero mode for that side of the game,
캠페인 히어로 모드.
it left the live service with less focus, and by doing that, you know, it put us in like this really difficult position. So we could either be, and it put us in a difficult position because like those two sides of the game were now like tied together. So like Overwatch Live support was now tied to development on Overwatch 2 systems and features. And that's it's a difficult spot to be in because suddenly you have like these two core values that aren't aligning with each other anymore. Is it like, hey, let's just get Overwatch 2 out as fast as we possibly can, so that we can start supporting the live game some more, but before we actually think it's ready, you know, that it goes against everything that I think Blizzard stands for, you know. Or is it, hey, let's keep working on Overwatch 2 and release everything when we think it's great, and have this gap stretch on longer and longer, and we couldn't do that. So in essence, us kind of like splitting both sides of the game from each other is a way for us to start addressing this problem. You know, like I love this company. There's like so many talented people here. I've been working here almost 20 years, and one of the reasons that I'm here is because I feel like when Blizzard releases a game, it's going to be great. It's going to be amazing, and that it's also going to have a high level of support to it. And so I think pulling these two parts of the game away from each other is our way of
그러니까요, 진짜 하나도 뭘 하는지 모르겠어요.
At the same time,
한국에서는 통역 방송 해주는다는 사람이 한 명도 없어서 아쉽네요.
Yeah, and I think the feedback to that strategic move has been overarchingly very, very
계속
positive.
찾아보는데 없어요.
So excited to see everything which has been shared from you guys last week. But there has been a big communication drought in Overwatch
이따가
in
뭐
the past.
대충
So how will your team ensure
이따
that
한
things will
시간
be
뒤에가
different now? Like how
레전드
frequent should or can we
시작이니까
actually expect some meaningful
5시부터니까 어차피
communication
이게
updates
시작이
heading our way?
지금까지 이렇게 토크로 한 시간 때울 예정인가 봐.
I think part of the reason why we didn't do as good of a job over the last several months in communicating as we wanted to was as we were sort of making this shift in strategy that Aaron just talked about it's sort of challenging to talk about that until you figured out exactly
죄송해요. 제가 영어를 못해서 통역해주고
and
싶지만 안 되네요.
So, I think the whole team understands that collectively we needed to do a better job. And going forward, we need to do a better job of communicating with our players. We made that renewed promise in the update that Aaron shared last
약속하겠다는데 뭘?
week. And
업데이트를 자주
I
하겠다고?
think there's still some skepticism, right? Of well, they've said this
개소리
before.
한다.
Do you actually mean it this time? Our hope is that
이미
we're here a week
옵지1에서
later,
치는 게
coming back and talking to
몇 갠데.
players again, sharing more information, talking about how the alpha's going, all of that stuff. Really in that spirit of we made that promise, we intend to keep it, and even going forward as we look toward our first beta test, our goal really is even between now and then to be coming out regularly with more information about what players can expect there and continuing to respond to questions where we can. So we know that we need to prove it. I think this is hopefully a good first
5시에
step in that direction.
베타 정보 나온대요.
Yeah, definitely. A
지금은
trust-building
한
exercise,
시간
but on the
정도
right track right
이렇게
here.
때울
I'm so glad
생각인가
that
봐,
all three
얘네들.
of you are joining me for a chat today.
근데 이렇게
Now,
때우는 거
we
우리가
did
뭐라
also
못하는
hear a
게
commitment
얘네들이
to
한 시간
delivering
일찍
more
켜준
content.
거잖아.
But
그래서 얘네들이 떠드는 걸로 한 시간 때운다고 우리가 뭐라 할 게 못 돼. 야, 똑똑한데 얘네들? 왜냐면 얘네들이 한 시간 일찍 켜준 거니까. 야, 머리 잘 썼다.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
아, 그거네. 야, 지금 뭐야 이거 배경이 그거네. 그 QCW인지 뭔지 영어 세 글자 유명 스트리머 있잖아요. 오버워치 예전에 개쩔었던 리거. 이거 배경이 그거네. 그 사람이 유출시킨 그 배경을 지금 여기서 쓰고 있네. 이거 그거야. 그거 맞네. 옵치2 배경 화면이야 이거. 오.
And to do it just takes more people, you know.
그쵸?
And so we have been growing. We have been expanding. We're over 200 people.
우린 이미 다 알고 있어. 이게 옵치2 배경인 걸. 얘들아.
We're going to continue
빨리
to grow
그냥
on top of that. And
이미지나 동영상을 보여줘 제발.
Big thing, right? And we talk about Overwatch 2 a lot, but like I kind of feel like we have the Overwatch team 2.0 as well. It's this collection of like amazingly talented individuals that all had a love for Blizzard and a love for Overwatch.
오버워치 3는 뭔
and help create
쌉소리야.
more things for this game, and we are so lucky to have all of them. And at the same time, we still have like
그렇죠.
this
5시
amazing core of
몰라
people,
얘네들
that helped ship the first game.
시간
all of
질질
the
끄는 것도
directors
잘해
on our
블리자드가
team,
또
or most of them,
5시
were all
땡친다고
there
바로
for the
하진 않을
inception
거예요.
of the original game. We have like
5시부터
multiple designers on this team that have
찔끔
all
몇
been at
초씩
Blizzard for
찔끔
over 20
보여주거나
years and bring,
옛날에 보여줬던
including Jeff
것들
Goodman,
다시
and
돌려 보여주다가
bring like this
한 5시
incredible amount of,
반에서 6시 될
sort of like
때쯤 그때부터
experience
새로운 거
and knowledge of the game,
한 10분, 20분
with
공개
them.
그리고
And,
끝.
and so yeah, so the team is
미래가
growing,
보이는데
and it's
잠깐만.
important for us to keep growing.
미래가
It's all
보이는데?
because we want to be able to support the
에이,
game.
아니 근데 내가 말한 건
as much as
너무
we want.
과장하고 오바 떤 거고요. 실제
There's certainly
그러겠냐?
no lack of talent
말도 안
on
돼.
this team or any team at Blizzard really. And I can see our chat
아 근데
is also
이번에
complimenting
기대컨
our
잘해야
ability to
되는
stare into
게
the camera. We're very good
그렇게
at that.
크게
What can you
홍보를
say?
안 했어요. 이
It's
행사를
different,
한다는
but,
거를.
it's perfection at this point.
우리나라에서도
Now,
오버워치
Aaron,
레카
you
유튜버들이
saying live service earlier?
알려준 거 아니었으면은 몰랐어 다. 트위터 그거 하나만 남겨서 이걸 행사를 하는 거잖아. 트윗 하나로. 트윗 하나 글만 올려갖고 하는 행사잖아. 아님 말고 잘 모르겠는데 트위터에서 본 것만 기억해서 모르겠어요. 아님 말고. 그니까 그렇게 큰 행사는 아니에요. 그냥 오버워치 2 이제 베타 하기 전에 그거예요. 잠깐 한번 찔끔 보여주고 마는 거. 딱 그 수준이기 때문에 기대컨을 잘 하셔야 돼요. 어쩔 수 없어. 애초에 그렇게 시작한 거니까 이 행사가. 그래도 우린 이거라도 너무 좋아.
Always keeping the game fresh, and it's also like changing the game. So, especially like different.
아 맞다. 참고로 어차피 영어 못 알아들고 있으니까 저는 말할 게 있는데 오버워치 2 베타 테스트 5인큐 맞춰서 하려 하거든요. 그래서 저와 같이 5인큐 하실 분들, 저 유튜브 컨텐츠 찍는데 도와주실 분들, 지금부터 오버워치 2 유튜브 컨텐츠 찍을 때 인원을 구하고 있습니다. 제 정보에 디코 서버 있거든요. 거기 들어오셔서 시참 공지에 있을 거예요. 거기서 잘 찾아보면 오버워치 2 관련 시참 공지가 있습니다. 그거 보시고 DM 주시면 돼요.
places that it had ever been in, but people still wanted there to be changes to the game. And when we make like balance changes,
저번에
to the game, or any type
블리즈컨
of change, we always
보여준
want that.
영상을 그거일 것 같아. 약간 새로운 구도와 새로운 장면으로 만들었지 않았을까? 신맵들 안 보여줬던 장소들, 공간, 그냥 신맵 안 보여줬던 공간. 그리고 신캐 신캐 확실히 좀 많이 보여주지 않을까 이번에는. 그래도 소전은 다 보여줘도 될 것 같은데, 소전 말고 2명이 더 추가되는 거 아니에요? 오버워치 2 나오면? 근데 이번 베타에선 소전만 추가되니까 마우라인지 뭔지 모르겠는 거 해서 총 3명이 추가되는 걸로 알고 있거든요. 떡밥으로는 오버워치 2가. 그래서 소전은 다 까줘야 되는 거 아니야? 솔직히 소전 하나는? 진짜 신캐 얘네 신캐를 너무 애껴서 진짜 미치겠어. 오버워치 하면서 그나마 재미있는 요소가 딱 그거 하나인데, 신캐. 에코 이후로 씨발 다 잠가버려서 진짜 너무 재미가 없어. 3개 더 남아. 그쵸? 파티 나오고 시그마 나오고 3개 더 남았다. 그 3개가 그래서 같이 나온다는 얘기가 그래서 많은 거잖아요. 아님 말곤데. things that actually represent parts of our everyday experiences, and so like continuing to 에브리데이 뭘 새로운 경험을 하고
pieces
있대요.
of content like that and updating those is all part of
뭐 컨텐츠 뭐 업데이트 뭐 어쩌고 저쩌고 그래요.
Or like our interpretation of what a live service game is.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, as happy as I am to play Junkenstein Revenge for the next 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
I do also appreciate
so funny.
Now, I want to shift gears. I want to talk about the alpha as well as
so
the
funny.
upcoming beta. We know the alpha is up and running. The beta just on the horizon. What are your main goals for the alpha as well as the beta? What kind of performance benchmarks, I guess, did your team set yourself for either of those two?
뭐래요?
For me and my team, you know, we're
우와 맞아 호라이즌하고 뭐 리메이크 한대잖아. 똑같은 점령 맵들 점령 그냥 삭제하고 점령 맵들 다 리메이크 한다며. 파리, 호라이즌, 하나무라. 하나무라 같은 점령 맵은 재밌었는데 아누비스랑 그게 화물로 바뀌는 건 조금 아쉽다. 리메이크 되는 게 아쉽다. 재밌는 점령전도 있는데 그 예전에 신캐 내라고 독촉 안 했어. 그쵸? 에코도 없었을 뻔한 거였어. 에코 나온 걸로 감사해야지.
So it sort of like pretty quickly got a lot of feedback about a lot of stuff that was pretty overpowered. So you know we have been reacting.
5시 되기 전에 양치 한번 하고 와야겠다. 입이 텁텁해요.
I think that there's a lot of interesting things that are happening now that other people are playing it, and Jeff was alluding to it. But there's also like a lot of different skill levels that are in the alpha too. So we don't have Overwatch League players on the development team, and so to be able to see the way that they play the game is fascinating. It's almost like we get two sets of feedback sometimes, or a spectrum of feedback for our game, because it plays pretty differently between like mid skills to high skills, and then like that upper echelon of
스킬 뭐 추가된 얘기인가?
there, you know, like
그쵸?
you think about the aim, like, and the precision that some of these people play with, it really affects some of the like decisions and the way that we think about the game. And so
채팅창 가리니까 여기 있을까?
great to get all of the feedback, but it's also nice to get like a new perspective from people as well, and it's something that we're not really able to get on the team, and now we're able to get as we're watching like a whole new set of players jump into the game.
시청자들 이제 좀 빠지는 거 보니까 한국 통역해주는 사람 생겼나?
balance pieces that we're looking at.
어디 한번 볼까?
Yeah, I mean, with actually all due respect to my colleagues on the dev team, like playing against Jake on the alpha is a different experience.
뭘 했는지 몰라서 다 빠지는 건가? 아 이거 내가 실시간 통역해주면서 보면은 오늘 시청자 레전드 찍는 건데 와 이거를 영어를 못해서 이렇게 또 기회를 날리는구나 내가. 영어만 잘했어도 씨.
Less kind of cool goals for the alpha and the upcoming beta of like stability and testing servers and matchmaking systems, and there's a whole bunch of things where changing systems under the hood like we have, and moving to 5v5 and what impact does that have on our queue times and how we do matchmaking and all of those types of things, where it's sort of a little bit less like in your face as a player than, hey, there's a new hero, or we've reworked some of the other heroes to change balance, but it's also really important for our team.
Yeah, I guess the more data points you can collect from every angle, the better the end result will be. Now, of course, also the more feedback you get, the more comprehensive your feedback is. So I do wonder, how are people actually chosen for the alpha and beta? How do you choose who should come in
운영 환경
shouldn't?
부서라는데요?
For the alpha, it's the vast majority of players in there are actually our fellow Blizzard employees. And then we have this group of Overwatch League pros, basically some of like our family members, like my little brothers in the alpha. And I think for a lot of the members of the dev team, being able to invite in even just one or two of their friends is really cool.
야 감자 나오기 시작했다.
And then there's a small handful of others, but it really is this pretty tight group, and
감자 얘들아 감자 농사해 빨리.
to go from just a couple hundred of us
근데 얘네 채팅 안 볼 것 같은데.
several thousand people when you include
지들 할 말만 계속 할 것 같은데.
employees in there, and really to be able to
진짜요? 중요한 얘기
get enough
같다고요?
feedback over this
잠깐만.
period where by the time that we launch the beta, we've had the opportunity to take a couple of passes at addressing bugs and other types of things like that, some balance changes that we can talk more about, that type of stuff. For the beta, honestly, we've been blown away by just the enthusiasm for it. I think I speak on behalf of all of the poor people on our server and website team. They were prepared too, and it still crashed the server. So we've just been honestly, all of us, I think, humbled and
감자 보냈다고
genuinely
맞나?
feeling really grateful seeing the positive response to that. I think later today,
이모티콘
in a
과도한
little bit,
사용?
we're actually going to be able to update the
자동화돼?
beta sign-up site with an FAQ for
내가
players
직접 한
that
건데?
talks a little bit more about how we plan to select players in the beta, what that process will look like.
매니저가
But
감자
our goal, I think,
쳐낸다.
broadly for the first beta is
아, 너무
to bring
많이
in players
쳐서
in a
그렇구나, 한
broad range of
번에.
skill levels,
네다섯
broad
개만
range
해야
of
되구나.
regions, different system configurations, like some people with the new graphics card and some people without,
네다섯
and
개만
those
하자.
types of things. Just again in that spirit of
내가 할 수
having
있는 게
a
감자밖에
broad and
없다.
representative test as we continue to roll out this content and get a chance for players to get their hands on it and for our team to get all of that feedback.
Yeah, no surprises at all that the website crashed.
몇 개까지
So you're
되는
trying
거야,
to be
감자?
prepared, but just can't be. Just never be prepared for that.
예,
now you said
매니저가
broad spectrum.
제재를
I saw
해요.
some people in chat asking already, and obviously all
감자
over the
찔끔씩
internet.
보내는 건 또 돼.
Console players.
찔끔씩 보내.
Will they be able to get their hands
한 번에
on
많이
the
안 보내면
beta
돼요,
as well?
감자.
Will they have a chance to try it out before it goes live?
So for this first beta, we are keeping it to PC only. But while I
PC
can't
only?
really get
뭐?
into the details of it now, like we do want to include console players at a future
닌텐도로도
point in our
나올까,
beta testing
OBG2가
program,
근데?
and we're working toward doing that.
All right. Well, that's good to know. There you have it, console players. You're welcome. We know that our players, our pro players, are currently wilding out in the alpha. Can you speak to what the reception
뭘
and
말해줄 수
feedback from
있냐고요?
them has been like so far? Like how extensive, helpful, or even eye-opening that kind of feedback from that pro level has been for you guys?
In some ways, it's been
오버워치2가
surprising, and in some ways it
오버워치의
hasn't been.
연장선이니까
I'm really happy at just the amount of feedback we're getting.
그런가?
It's just been great. It's sort of, we have these channels open to communication. There's like a flood of
옵치
information.
리그는 아예 안
disseminating to
하고
my team, we're deciding what
옵치2
to do all the time.
리그부터
But,
다시 아예
it's
새롭게
been
시작한다 했으니까
really amazing seeing what they do with the reworks, and they pretty quickly called out things that were kind of overpowered that we were worried about. So that, I guess
그것도 해.
that's good and bad. Obviously Sojourn in there, and she's kind of based on this railgun. So I mean, that's a hyper accurate, high damage
솔직히
weapon.
이건 감자
Obviously, the
보낼만
pros are going to
하죠.
be pretty good with that. So
우리
something we were
얼마나
worried about, and
기다려놓게
pretty much immediately came to light. So
시네마틱
originally
언제
we were
올렸니?
looking at this alpha, we weren't sure
원래
how many
시네마틱
times we were gonna be able to
올라오고
update it.
게임이 늦게
We
출시되는
thought
게
maybe
맞긴
we'd
한데
just be able to put it out there and gather a lot of feedback.
오버워치는
and
좀
then
특수한
maybe we wanted data,
상황이에요.
but
우리가
pretty quickly we were
많이
just like, okay,
진짜
we need
많이
to patch, we need
기다려줬어요.
to make updates to this, we need to
업데이트를.
respond, we need to iterate.
근데 뭔
So
오버워치2가
we've actually been able
나옵니다
to do that. I think
하고서
we just had our first big
그걸
bounce back today,
빌미로
actually. So,
존나 더
we're
기다리게
able to sort of
해버려요.
gather feedback and iterate.
업데이트를.
It's been amazing. and
에코
it's really
하나
helpful
찍
for
나오고 끝.
sort of get that new fresh eyes on everything, especially the pros.
감자
and
보낼만해
see
이거
what
진짜.
comes out of it.
감자야 진짜.
Yeah, and there's been some like really interesting pieces of feedback too, and like
흥미롭군요.
from the dev team and even from a lot of the people that are playing in the alpha right
사람들은
now. There's so much positive feedback.
너무
A
많이
lot of it even around 5v5, where it feels like
5대5를
the pace of the game, it's not crazy fast, but it's sped up a
미쳤다고
little bit.
생각해요.
They're getting stuck at chokes, especially behind something like a double barrier,
뭔가
less
스페셜한 게
than they were before. It feels like there's more space to move around the map.
공간이 부족해요. 오버워치 맵에.
And then a lot of times, like you'll look at some of the Overwatch League players, and there's some of that's happening, but it's at like a different
신기루
level.
오지게 만들어서
So,
기다리겠으면
when there's only one tank,
기대컨 얘네들이
and when
애초에
there's a lot less
시네마틱
CC out,
개쩔게
on the
해서 우린
battlefield, 'cause that's
기대컨
some of
이미
the changes
고장났어.
that we've made here also.
시네마틱 하나로.
Sometimes like a tracer can get into the back line
블리자드가
and
제2의
just
유비소프트가
wreak havoc,
되는 건
because
아닌지.
it doesn't feel like there's as much that
시네마틱만
supports can do.
쩔고
There's not like an off tank that's healing.
그
There's
길을
not
걷고 있는 것
other
같아.
like members of the team that can like sort of like counter some
유비도
of the
운영
abilities that
못하잖아.
people have. So
공통점이
like,
꽤
you'll see some of
있네.
the like some of the heroes that we have,
분리자드랑
especially some of
유비가
the flanking heroes like
시네마틱 쩔고
Tracer and Reaper
운영
are now like
못하고
really dangerous back there. And we started getting
그래도
support that's like, hey,
재미는
it just
있어
feels like,
게임은
or we start getting
얘네들은
feedback
만드는
that
건
it feels
유비는
like our
재미없는데
support heroes
제 주관적인 건데
are unsupported.
제 기준으로
You know, and that,
유비 게임은
that
재미없는데
it's
얘네들은
just that
재밌어.
they need some work there. We think that feedback's right, and so
그러니까
so
여태
we're looking
오버워치 안
into it.
적은
We're hoping to
것만으로도
like
진짜
preserve all of the things that we think make 5v5 great, but also be able to kind of cater it
너무
to
많다.
this
안 돼.
high
뱀
skill
먹어도.
audience, and kind of merge all of that.
So how do you look into that kind of stuff? Like, what does the process for feedback
그러면
when it comes to
프로세스가 어떻게 해?
balance changes or concerns,
뭘 체인지해요?
especially? How does that process look like?
I mean, like usual, we get a lot of feedback from
마치
a lot of
무엇
different sources,
같나요?
but we do
라고 한
have
거가?
like a main channel of feedback where we get kind of from everybody, which is kind of nice that it's centralized. But a lot of it's looking at different people's perspectives and how they're playing it and trying to get context. I mean, we're in direct communication with people. It's not just like a one-way street where they're sending us stuff. A lot of times we're asking questions about how they're playing it or what maps they're playing on and stuff like that to sort of get better context. But a lot of the stuff that Aaron mentioned is sort of been consistent feedback. For example, that
스토리
supports
모드
feel like
관련 얘기다.
they're just really hard to
맞나?
survive. Basically, they're just getting dove on. The meta's really, really fast. For better or for worse, we knew it would be faster.
뭐가 빨라?
That's for sure. But it's definitely
네 말이 빨라.
kind of this like super dive right now almost. So I mean that's something we have this opportunity now to make these changes and iterate on the game and make sure it's in a place where everyone's gonna be happy with it.
행복하게?
I do wonder how frequent the bug fixes are currently in the alpha. Or I guess what I'm asking, what does the turnaround time from feedback / complaint to the fix look like at the moment?
I mean, it sort of depends. We actually had technically, like I said, we had the first patch today, but actually that's not even really true. We had a really small patch, I think, on Monday. So we've been able to patch, at least in this case, twice in 1 week, which is pretty nice. But yeah, so I mean, a lot of it depends on not necessarily sort of the tech side and how often we could patch and sort of QA things. A lot of it's sort of getting the feedback and discussing it and talking about what we want to do and how crazy do we want to try things. Sometimes it's we're trying we have a patch or two to try really, really crazy things, and if we tiptoe and try to make small changes, maybe we won't get anywhere useful. But if we make like a big change that you think is maybe even too strong, that's more sort of powerful feedback that you can combine with other feedback, and you can get a lot more get at the changes you really need, even if you think that change isn't going to be maybe what you want. So we did some pretty wild stuff today. We'll see how it plays, but that's kind of how we've been sort of trying to get at it, and how in my opinion, I just want to make changes as much as possible, because iteration is really where we really get at like the real good balance and where the fun really is.
Yeah, we also have this there's the balance changes, and then again there's like quality of life. Making one of the goals of the alpha, right, is that by the time we get to the beta, we've addressed some of the bugs that people are talking about that have impacted their experience, and our QA team has been doing an amazing job of like logging literally everything, and then it's sort of a like, how important is this thing to fix tomorrow? And some of the bugs are just like downright funny. I actually sort of wish we hadn't fixed some of them. Someone reported like Winston was too wide to fit through a door on our new map, Circuit Royale. That got fixed. So I think by the time that people get to see that map in beta, in fact, Winston will fit through the door. But there's like a whole bunch of that stuff that, again, when we had a couple hundred people testing this, you don't catch, and we've multiple times already been able to update the build and address things like that are a little more quality of life.
It's definitely chaotic.
Go ahead.
I was just comment on that. It's definitely chaotic to try to get, me and my team trying to get these balance changes in and test. We usually try to run some internal tests too to make sure we're not doing something like really broken. And then of course QA, we're getting bug fixes from the tech side, and everything. We're trying to like corral everything into one patch really quickly as fast as possible at the end. So it's pretty chaotic sometimes, but I think we're getting there.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with bugs. We're trying to hit all of the most egregious ones first. So we were able to jump on that Winston issue immediately, but there's or we were missing all of Sojourn's VO lines. in the alpha. You didn't know when she ulted. You know, she was just like this silent hero on the field. And people started saying like, oh, I think her ult line is like too quiet. You know, I'm not really
감자도
hearing
잘
it.
안 올라온다.
And other
감자
people are
치는
like,
것도
I don't think I
지쳤어
hear it
애들이.
all. And we investigated it. And this was maybe like an hour
5시에
into
올걸.
the alpha launching. It's like, oh,
30분 남았다.
whoops, they're all missing. And we're even getting feedback even down to like really small things like, hey, the particle effects on this fountain aren't coming out of like the person's mouth. They're coming out of like their forehead. And they'll include like screenshots and movies of it. So it's been really
Having my kind of nitpicky feedback.
That's good. You bet.
we should keep
Well, it's
that.
also always hard as a player, right, to figure out like, is this a feature or a bug? Like, is this that way, or is this actually something I should be reporting? Now, obviously, it's still early days in the alpha, but have there been any surprising revelations so far regarding the new content which is featured in the alpha? Looking at the new game mode push, for example, or some of the hero reworks, the new maps, or maybe just the switch to 5v5.
There's definitely been a lot of surprises on the hero side. I mean, there's some stuff that, I mean, this is like the opposite of answering your question, sort of, but it's in some ways I was really happy to see some confirmation too, because, you know, we had been playing internally for a long time, and like I said, our internal meta is obviously very different a lot of times, and so we were not obviously are always super confident in it. But you know, we heard a lot of concerns when we talked about 5v5 originally that, you know, only main tanks were going to really be viable, probably like Reinhardt. Like, how do you not play Reinhardt in that situation, for example, or something? And internally we were like, man, it really kind of feels like the opposite. Like, we're a little worried for Reinhardt, and we're a little like feeling like Diva and Zarya and are, you know, are really strong. And so we just sort of like, well, I guess we'll see what happens when we put this in other people's hands. And that, you know, that's one example where it turned out that pretty much they agree that Reinhardt's maybe a little weak, and sort of the off tanks are actually kind of running the show right now. So that, I mean,
Especially
it's
Doomfist.
Yeah, right.
You should
So
talk about
Doomfist.
Doomfist a little bit.
Yeah.
He is strong.
So Doomfist, probably one of the bigger reworks certainly is switch roles so that he's a tank now. So that's it's really been super interesting getting feedback on that, because we haven't done that very often. Technically not the first time. Symmetra used to be support originally, way back in the day. But so yeah, Doomfist has, you know, been generally extremely positive hearing that, getting the feedback from him. And I was really scared to see what kind of feedback we're going to get, because it's so different. He's a little strong right now, so I don't know how much of the super positive feedback is coming from how strong he is, but I was really worried about him in particular, because there are certain heroes in our game that have a really strong sort of feel to them that if you play a lot, you sort of get attached to, and it's really hard to distance yourself from that, you know, especially heroes like Tracer and Genji and Doomfist, like the high mobile heroes like that. So Doomfist is definitely one of those. You have the dedicated fan base, but from what we've gotten feedback on so far from the dedicated Doomfist players that we have, they're generally really excited for it, and they're really happy even with the role change. So I've been really happy about that. We have to nerf him a little bit, but you know, like everything else.
Oh, but
Someday
yeah,
I want to find out how these changes happen. Like, someday a dev shows up and he often is like, how about he's a tank now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to speak to that actually is to kind of why it went that way. I think it's interesting. You know, part of one of the major sort of overarching changes we were trying to get at for the combat of the game is to just reduce crowd control effects a
분명히
lot. So a lot
피드백
less stuns,
수용
especially hard crowd
중이고
control effects. So,
일주일에 2번 정도 패치하고
and,
있대요.
you know, we're
그렇다는데?
looking at Mei, and we changed how Mei's freeze work. It only works on
영
ult
안
now, and stuff like that. And those are
되겠으니까
kind of like low-hanging fruit
원래
things that we
잘
can
안
change. And when it comes to
보지만
a hero like
오늘은
Doomfist,
진짜
you're like, well, what
필요해서
do we do? This guy sort of built on
DC
crowd control.
인사이드
He's so
겐지
we either
갤러리
need to
보면서
basically
좀
go in there and
볼게요.
change,
어쩔 수가 없다.
probably a
이거
lot of
아니고서
his kit,
도저히
or
이해를 할 수가
really
없잖아.
reduce crowd control on how he
분맨이
functions,
또
which is hard to sort of combo
베타
base
테스터
hero.
중에
Or move into a
둠피하던
tank
애들
role,
다
and, you know, the tanks are
둠탱커
kind of
됐어도
allowing the crowd
재밌게
control and hard crowd control to exist.
하더라는데?
So we could sort of maintain a lot of this feel
둠탱커
of his
되면
kit in that
재밌어?
role.
그게?
And so
재밌대,
that's kind of
근데
way that it went
해본
with it, and it
사람들은.
worked out really well. So, but yeah, as Aaron mentioned earlier, it has
방금
led to
풀린
some
신캐
scary
떡밥이래.
issues with
없어?
heroes that we knew were
아, 이런
gonna
낚시끌이
be maybe
많다니까,
problematic with the
DC는.
check back crowd control, like Tracer, Genji, Reaper. So we had some plans to, we had some things in place to sort of reduce their power, but it clearly wasn't enough.
분맨이 뭐야 소전의 레이건 그러니까 제가 지금
really
DC발 소식이에요. 제가 말하는 건 전부 다. 그러니까 절대 신뢰하지 마시고 요거랑 맞는 내용인지 몰라요. 그냥 영 도저히 모르겠으니까 읽어드릴게요. 소전의 레이걸은 정확도와 데미지가 높아서 너프할 거래요. 우린 뭐 소전이 어떤지도 모르는데 너프를 하는 걸 얘기를 하면 주기적인 업데이트로 라이브 한 게임. 아 맞네, 내가 잘 들었네 아까 거는. 이거는 맞다. 주기적인 업데이트. 컨텐츠 빈도가 다를 거라는데 앞으로 많은 컨텐츠들 낼 거래요. 네, 이거 소리를 조금 줄이자. 그리고 다섯 명 된 이유는 대충 재능 있는 게임 디렉터들의 결정이니까 재미있고 쩔어서 5명이라는데요.
There's been a change to his kit, and we'll go into like more details of like the change to his kit.
보통 이런 라이브 행사하면 갤러리도 원래 글 자주 리젠되거든요. 근데 지금 글 리젠 안 되고 있어. 이 정도로 오버워치가 망했어. 뭐 정시 출시 전에는 업데이트 없단 말이라고요? 어쩔 수 없다. 이거 DC에서 제가 내가 생각해도 레전드인데요. DC에서 알려드립니다. 죄송해요. 아니면 트위터에서 찾아볼까? 오버워치2 키워드. 야, 솔직히 근데 실시간으로 이런 정보를 알려줄 만한 곳을 찾을 만한 데가 있을까? 그쵸? 트위터 DC 아니고서야 어떻게 알 수가 없어. 트위터는 그냥 오버워치2 언급이 없네요.
quite as much spotlight so far, which is the ping system. I personally
얘들은 스트리밍 하는지도 몰라.
I would
트위터
love to
애들은.
hear your thoughts
다시
on
DC.
the process. Why you felt this is necessary to be added? Like what were you
둠피스트
hoping to
얘기를
improve
엄청나게
or
했나
fix
본데?
with the ping system?
Yeah, so the ping system has actually been
Ping
great,
system?
and I agree with you. There's moments there where it feels like it changes the way you play the game or think about the game. And there's a lot of reasons to do a system like this.
1탱돼도 둠피가
everybody
탱커
wants
가니까
to communicate
걔
using voice.
둠피충들 다 탱커라서 탱커 유저들 안 빠지겠는데? 생각해보니까. 근데 진짜 초라하다. 롤 같았으면은 글리젠 장난 아니었을 텐데 한번 새로 고침하지? 바로 다음 페이지가. 근데 오버워치 지금 나 글리젠을 지금 보니까 갤러리 보니까 글이 1분에 1개? 2개? 3개? 1분에 인게임 화면 안 보여줌이 아니고 못 보여줌? 못 보여준다고? 이거 뭔 소리야? 이거 모르겠어요. 이거는 뭐 못 보여준다는 모르겠어요. 몰라. 지금 제가 말하는 거 다 알아서 걸러 들으세요. DC에서 전해오는 소식이니까 알아서 걸러서 들어야 합니다. 제가 말하는 건. 어떤 히어로는 뭐 모이라? 모이라 얼굴이 뭐
you can ping non-heroes in the game, like Bob. And also it's like totally customizable. So not only is it context sensitive,
뭘 많이 커스터마이징 한다는데?
we have something kind of similar to the comms wheel, where you can select the different pings that are more important to you. So you don't always have to use the context sensitive ping. You can use all sorts of other different ones. And so that's kind of
지금
like
글이 애초에 잘 안 올라오는 게 베타 얘기 중인데 했던 말 또 하는 거라서 새로운 것만 쓰고 있대요. 글을. 근데 새로운 게 얼마나 없으면 이렇게 글이 안 올라올까. 대박이다 진짜. 이렇게 글 리젠 안 되는 거 진짜 처음 본다. 빨리 새로운 정보 좀 제발. 새로운 정보 좀 제발. 했던 말 또 하지 마 제발. 저번에 했던 말.
for them to
캐릭터?
to actually have unique VO lines depending upon which support character is pinging. So like right now, if you're support and you ping, it'll say something like "Come to me for healing." But wouldn't it be great if it was Anna and she said something like "Get in line of sight so I can heal you," or if it was Lucio saying
핑 시스템은 왜 또 쳐 얘기하는 건지 모르겠어. 안 하겠다 해놓고서 왜 핑 시스템 얘기가 근데 왜 나온 거야 근데 얘네들? 어? 핑 시스템이 뭐? 오버워치에 핑 시스템 있으면 진짜 안 돼. 가뜩이나 지금 치료가 필요하다 겐지 그 목소리 PTSD 오는데 이제 핑까지 저기 있어 저기 있어 씨발 핑 차단 안 내놓을 거면 핑 만들지 마 제발. 혈압 올라 갑자기 뒷목이. 죽었으면 미아 핑 존나 치고 그걸 롤에서만 느끼는 그 쓰레기 같은 걸 오버워치에서도 느끼게 해주겠다는 거야 이 새끼들. 핑 시스템은 게임 자체적으로 소통을 늘린 거래요. 모두가 팀보하고 팀챗 하는 것을 원한 거는 아니기 때문에 도입한 이유가 있다. 그건 그래. 모두가 팀보하고 그런 거 좋아하지 않으니까 약간 그렇잖아. 그거 문제 있잖아. 불통 유저들 완전 팀원 말 아무것도 안 듣고 핑이라도 찍어주고 아니면은 채팅 안 치는 애들 핑이라도 찍어주고 하면 괜찮긴 한데 이게 긍정적인 거보단 악성적인 측면이 더 큰 거 같은데 이게 핑 시스템이 굳이 들어가야 되나? 게임의 템포가 빠르니까 팀보로 습득할 수 있는 정보의 한계가 있어서 핑 시스템을 넣었대요. 근데 또 그것도 템포가 빨라서 핑 시스템을 넣었는데 또 문제점이 템포가 빨라서 핑 시스템에 안 어울려. 템포가 빠른데 핑을 넣어봐. 저기 여기 있는데 저기 여기 있어 했는데 위치 변환했어 손브라가. 근데 그래서 팀이 쳐다봤더니 그 위치에 아무것도 없어. 템포가 그렇게 빠른데 핑 시스템을? 이유가 템포가 빨라서 핑 시스템을 넣겠다는데 그렇게 빠른데 문제인데 이거?
Alright, well, April 26th then, mark your calendars on this
오늘 진짜 이렇게 입만 털다 끝나나 얘네들. 잠이나 자는 게 오히려 나을 것 같은데요 여러분? 아니면 5시까지 기다려보자. 5시 아니니까 아직 5시에도 이지랄 할 거면은 그냥 자자.
This is going to be such an exciting time for our community, for our
근데 애초에
players,
방송 킨다고 한 목표가 그거래요. 뭐 새로 공개한다고 한 게 아니고 그냥 옵지2 알파 뭐 인상 그런 느낌, 뉘앙스 첫 클베 목표 그냥 이런 거. 어차피 지들끼리 떠드는 게 주 목적인 거네. 아 그러네. 애초에 이번에 맞잖아. 내가 아까 한 말이 맞네. 이게 애초에 4월 26일 베타 시작이래요. 4월 26일 베타 시작입니다 여러분. 몇 시인지는 모르겠어요. 4월 26일 베타 시작. 에? 잠깐만. 4월 26일 베타 시작하고 끝? 아니야 5시부터 시작하는 걸 4시부터 시작해서 오히려 좋아했더니 잠깐만 이따가 다시 5시 아니야. 그래 애초에 지들끼리 떠든다는 거를 애초에 그러겠다고 했는데 진짜 레알 그랬다고 뭐라 할 게 또 안 되긴 해. 디렉터 봐줘서 감사. 스트림 끝. 방송 끝. 건질만한 내용 딱 하나. 2개. 핑 시스템이 추가됐다. 그리고 뭐 업데이트 자주 한다. 워치 1보다 업데이트 자주 할 거다 출시되면. 그리고 4월 26일 베타 시작. 씨발 씨발 씨발? 에? 아니 근데 또 뭐야, 솔저도 탱커로 전향한다는 얘기도 있는데 잠깐 이건 아님 말고요. 둠피도 약간 느려지고 윈스턴처럼 된대고 이건 알고 있고 솔저까지 탱커화 한다고? 그거는 처음 듣는데. 디프라니 걘가? 옵치 1 디렉터인가? 걔 반응이 지금, 걔도 반응 물음표 놀랐는데 걔도? 채팅창 민심 영어 몰라도 아닌가? 다프란 그쵸? 다른 선수인가? 선수 리거 맞죠? 잠깐만 모르겠다. 일단 이거 녹화 이제 끄고 유튜브에 바로 업로드 할게요. 조회수는 뽑아야 되겠어. 짜증나.